I propose to take questions 70, 100 and 114 together. On the 19th of December 2016, in Bord Pleanála granted planning permission for the North South Interconnector Project in Ireland. I'll try and ramble through this because there's a lot of it here that we've been through before. Following on from the discussions that we've had, I've looked at this again. I've told you the difficulties I have in relation to complying with the full motion here because of the issues regarding Bord Pleanála, and I, as Minister, and the overarching duty that I have, unless lawfully challenged, to respect a decision that was lawfully made by the bodies. However, on foot of those discussions, I've decided to proceed with a second measure to look at the levels of compensation provided to land and property owners in the proximity of high voltage power lines in a European context. We've published, I think we circulated those terms of reference earlier on today to interested members, and is our intention to go to tender on that. And that will give an idea and take into account the issues that have been raised before in relation to distance from power lines, landscape, tourism, heritage, etc. So I've tried, insofar as I can, listen to the concerns from the communities and from the members of the Oireachtas here, and on foot of that, I have come up with a study specifically looking at the levels of compensation provided to land and property owners in proximity to the high voltage power lines in the European context. We get that completed as soon as possible and published and laid before the House.
Take a comment from Deputy Smith and then from Deputy Stanley and a final comment from Minister Naughten, because we're way over time. Is that acceptable? So, Deputy Smith.
Okay, Minister, can I just read the reaction of one of the locals, will say in Monaghan, where the Monaghan Anti-Pylon Group are in relation to this terms of reference for a second study today. Okay, this type of study is exactly what we do not want, as it obviously is intended to assist EirGrid in benchmarking landowners and residential for compensation for overhead lines in an international context. Now, the feeling on the ground is that this, talking about compensation for starters, is the wrong language to use. The people living in that area are worried about land valuation, they're worried about health, they're worried about landscape, and I'm sorry to tell you, Minister, but the publication of a second study in terms of reference talking about compensation really gets people's backs up, and there's no other way of putting it. It has made them distraught and worried that they're still, almost as though you're trying to assist EirGrid in ploughing ahead with their plans and completely ignoring what their worries are. They're not worried about compensation, they're worried about their health, they're worried about the devaluation of their land, and they're worried about where they have to live for the rest of their lives.
Stanley, give you a minute.
Question 114. Just to say, look, the history of this project is a very poor one, and I think that the cost to date is running in excess of 30 million, and we haven't even put a JCB on site. Could you just say that in relation to the compensation deals with one issue, Minister. The main issues that we're hearing on the ground, and well, it's not in my constituency, but my colleagues in the party, indeed TDs and councillors from other constituents, other parties, will be getting the same message, is health and safety, the effects on agriculture and the environment, and the effects on landscape and tourism and life quality issues. They're the issues that are there. And, you know, we've gone into this matter in great detail with EirGrid, with department officials, through questions, face-to-face meetings over a year now since I've started meeting people in relation to this. And I'm not convinced that the overhead option is the one to go with here. This North-South Interconnector is needed, we all know that, and it needed all the more now in terms of Brexit and you know, that we integrate the two economies, North and South. Everyone knows that makes sense. The North needs our electricity very much. They're very much in need of it. We need to stabilise our grid, and the larger we make it, the grid, the more stabilised it will become, and provides another opportunity as well to feed in renewables into that. And we all understand that. That's all been explained to as well. But the way you're going on this, you know, Somebody needs to get in and deal with this issue now and steer this project in the right direction.
Thank you very much, Deputy. One brief final comment from Minister.
Can I say to you, and you're right in relation to the need for this grid, and that's before we even had Brexit at all. And the first study that I agreed to on foot of the motion here in the House is specifically looking at that, whether it's technically feasible to meet those requirements that you have just spoken about, and to do that with an underground connection. Because, as has been consistently said to me as Minister, is that it's not possible to meet those requirements with an underground connection. And we are reviewing that. And I listened intently to exactly what people said the last day. But the difficulty is people want me to listen but are not prepared to listen to the points that I've made. And I've gone as far as I can go with this in relation to these terms of reference. I also have to be conscious of the fact that there is also a judicial review. I'm one of the named parties in one of those judicial reviews, and that's coming before the Commercial Court on the 18th of July. My intention is to proceed with both of these studies and to publish these studies as soon as they are available. And the reality is, the previous studies, people criticised them as well, and then, when they were published, referenced them. So we can't have it every way.
Okay. The questions to Minister.